Every 2 years, the entire world just seems to stop and watch. We see these incredible athletes, a whole lot of national pride, and moments that honestly become a part of history. But behind all the spectacle of the Olympic Games, there's a story that's way more complex than just winning and losing. So we're going to dive into that story, go beyond the gold medal, and really try to understand what the Olympics are all about today. At its very core, the whole Olympic movement is built on this really beautiful ideal. It's a philosophy, right there in the official creed, that's all about participation, the effort, and the shared human experience being more important than just victory. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. This brings up the huge question we're going to tackle today. Can that pure, simple ideal actually survive in our modern world? We're going to look at how the Olympics tries to balance its noble goals with the kind of harsh realities of big money, big politics, and all sorts of global controversies. So, to really get what's happening now, we've got to go way back to the beginning. The modern Olympics weren't just invented out of thin air. They were a revival, a very deliberate attempt to bring this ancient tradition roaring back to life in a new era. What's absolutely wild is just how long that gap was. The ancient games ran for over 1,000 years before they were shut down, and then nothing for another 1,500 years. That's when this French aristocrat, Pierre de Coubertin, decided to spearhead their revival, created the IOC, and launched the very first modern games in Athens. And you see, Coubertin wasn't just trying to bring back a track meet. He had this much grander vision, a whole philosophy he called Olympicism. The whole point was to use sports to build a better, more peaceful world by developing not just physical strength, but also character and, understanding between nations. But, as you can probably guess, that super idealistic vision, well, it ran smack into a huge challenge: money. The journey from this purely amateur contest to the multi-billion-dollar machine we see today is one of the biggest changes in Olympic history, for sure. So, back in the day, the rules were super strict. The games were only for gentlemen amateurs. But then the Cold War changed absolutely everything. The Soviet Union and its allies started pumping money into these state-sponsored full-time amateurs, which, let's face it, created a huge imbalance. To even things out, the IOC eventually had to ditch the whole pure amateurism thing and let the pros in. And then came the real game changer, Los Angeles, 1984. By using stadiums that were already there and pioneering this idea of exclusive corporate sponsorships, the LA organizers didn't just avoid going into debt, they made a massive profit. This basically wrote the playbook for the commercially successful games we see today. Just to give you a sense of how much things have changed, get this. Back in 1956, the TV rights for the US broadcast sold for what now seems like pocket change, less than $500,000. Okay, now, you ready for this? Fast forward to 2014. NBC signed a deal for the rights all the way through 2032 for a staggering $7.75 billion. That just perfectly captures the insane exponential growth in the commercial value of the Olympic brand. So, with that kind of money and a massive global audience, it was pretty much inevitable, right? The Olympics was bound to become more than just sports. It turned into this powerful stage for political statements and sometimes a proxy battle for global conflicts. And yeah, throughout its history, the Games have been used for everything. The 1936 Berlin Games were a notorious showcase for Nazi ideology. Then in 1968, you have Tommy Smith and John Carlos using the metal podium for that powerful protest against racial injustice. And then, so tragically, in 1972, the Games became the site of a horrific terrorist attack. This whole political thing really boiled over during the Cold War. In 1980, the U.S. led this huge boycott of the Moscow Games because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So what happened 4 years later? The Soviet Union and its allies did the exact same thing, boycotting the LA Games. The athletes, of course, were just caught right in the middle of it all. All right, and that leads us to the next massive issue, the just mind-blowing price tag of hosting these things. Just look at this number for a second, 156%. On average, hosting the Games costs more than double what they thought it would. It is the most reliable financial outcome of the Olympics, a giant cost overrun. And we are not talking chump change here. The Beijing Games in 2008 cost over $40 billion. And then Sochi in 2014 just blew the roof off with a jaw-dropping $51 billion, making it the most expensive Olympic Games ever. So what's the result of all these crazy costs? It's pretty simple, actually. Cities are getting spooked. The number of places willing to even bid for the games is shrinking, and that poses a very, very real threat to the future of the Olympics as we know it.
Okay, so we've talked about the commercialism, the politics, the insane costs. It's a lot, right? Which brings up a pretty big question. With all of that baggage, why on earth do we all still tune in? Well, for all its flaws, in one really important way, the Olympic ideal has been a huge success, getting everyone to the party. Just look at how the number of nations taking part has exploded since the early days. It is one of the very few things on this planet that truly brings the whole world together. And that right there is the magic, the enduring power of the Olympics. For an athlete, it is a chance to become a legend. For a host nation, it's an opportunity like no other to show the world who they are. It's a stage for human achievement and national identity that is just unmatched. So we kind of end up right back where we started. The Olympic Games are stuck between this beautiful, pure idea and a really complicated reality. And as it moves into the future, it has to face this fundamental question. How does it change enough to survive the pressures of the 21st century without losing the very spirit that makes it so special in the first place?